Hello and welcome to Gold and Silver Assets. It's Sunday the 6th of October 2019 and today we're going to do a market report as well as compare gold to other currencies. So we'll start with the daily chart of US dollar gold price. Now a couple of weeks ago we broke out from this upwards trend line over here and price dipped down, and last week I mentioned that it's possible that price would go back up again to retest the underside of this trend line, which is exactly what's happened. So where do we go from here? Now I'm still erring on the side of thinking that prices are going to continue down on a downwards trend to test this 1440 level. But of course things could also move sideways from here, and we've got this downsloping trend line showing that we've got lower lows and lower highs forming. If we do break this trend line, then I would be wrong and we'd be looking at the next upwards move. But I think this 1560 level would still provide a lot of resistance. And the reason I say that is if we go back to the weekly time scale in the longer term. Now, if we look over here, we've got this long-term bull market that peaked over here in 2011. And what we're seeing here is that there was a lot of gyrations in price, and there would have been a bit of FOMO by the dip, particularly from retail buyers. Now, once this trend line broke, people who bought in this area would be sitting it out, thinking that prices would go up again. But of course, 6 years later, it's only then that the price has gone back to their buy price. And so that's 6 years of pain that these investors would have been feeling. And a lot of them would have said to themselves, look, if the price just goes back to my buy price, I'm selling up and investing elsewhere. And so that's why I think this is going to prove to be some formidable resistance here. And it's just going to take more than one more attempt before we can slice through that. Of course, it does depend on geopolitical events. So just take one major event and the price would just slice through that easily. But basically, over the next couple of months, I'm expecting price to remain in this region. And I'm actually thinking that price is going to go down to around the 1400 US dollar level. Silver's again pretty similar, so we've got these lower highs and we've got this downtrend line. Silver will likely move sideways to downwards. If it breaks the $16.5 level, then the next support level will be 15.5. So let's just wait and see what happens there. Now, why is it important to look at the gold price in currencies other than the US dollar? Well, if we look at this chart, so what I've done is basically produce the gold price in other currencies. And so but I've done that by expressing gold in the inverse of the dollar index. So the dollar index is basically composed of a basket of currencies, the majority of which is the euro. We've also got the Japanese yen and British pound, which are the next two highest contributors here. So in the yellow line, I've also expressed gold in US dollars. Now, if we basically by doing this comparison, we're using gold as the standard and we're comparing basically a foreign currency versus the US dollar in relation to gold. So if we look at when we had the gold bull market that was in full force over here, you can see that both the foreign currencies and US dollar price of gold was increasing in step. So these lines basically overlapping each other. But if we go back to the early stages of the bull market, and even in the bear market, you can see that this yellow line is lower than the red and green line. And what that means is that the US dollar was stronger than foreign currencies in this period of time. And the same thing has been happening in recent years again. So we've got this divergence. So remember that the lower line is the line representing the stronger currency. What this basically tells us is that we're not in a full force bull market, but instead we could be either still in the bear or in the very early stages of the bull market. And if that's the case, that means that although we've seen a very nice price rise, we ain't seen nothing yet. The price can go up a whole lot more. And what we'd need to do is wait to see for these prices to, basically the price of gold to go up in all currencies together. So let's look at gold in currencies other than the ones I've already mentioned. So this is an example of gold expressed in terms of Turkish lira. And this is very interesting because you can see that compared to the year 2000, the price of gold in Turkish lira has appreciated 8,000%. And there's a huge gap here between the price in Turkish lira and the gold price in US dollars. And what this means is that relative to gold, back in the year 2000, you'd have been much better off holding US dollars as opposed to Turkish lira. So US dollar was the stronger currency, which comes as no surprise. And in fact, in most of the currency charts that you'll see, the US dollar is the stronger of the two. But I did start to think about what about other currencies? And of course, we've got cryptocurrencies. So here's the chart for gold in US dollars and gold expressed in terms of Bitcoin. And you can see this is very different. Now, we don't have a long history of Bitcoin, so it goes back just over 10 years. And what we do see, which is very interesting, is that in the early phases, the US dollar was stronger than Bitcoin, but ever since 2012, Bitcoin has been the stronger of the two currencies relative to gold. Now, that doesn't mean to say that that's going to continue in the long term. This is just past performance, and so that's no guarantee of future performance. But I thought it was very interesting to see that relationship and how it's very different from other fiat currencies that we're seeing. The other reason that it's also useful to look at other currencies versus gold is that sometimes you can actually see some useful trading patterns in the charts which you won't necessarily see in the US dollar gold chart. So for example, if we look at gold in the Japanese yen or gold in Canadian dollars, we've got this nice triangle pennant pattern that occurs over multiple years, and we've recently broken out from that pennant in both these currencies. And this is a very bullish sign, and that, I think, increases the confidence that we've got a bull run in gold ahead of us. Now, one of the things to remember is that prices aren't going to go up in a straight line. Before we reached this consolidation region, you could see that price was very choppy, particularly over here. And the same is true in the Canadian dollar. And so we can expect something similar in the next leg. But the important thing to remember is that over these years, the general trend was upwards, and I would expect that to continue after this breakout. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Like and subscribe. Bye.